Hello, welcome to a Soulprint Mini. Thank you so very much for being here. My name is Cyndy. So, I'm recording this on Wednesday, early afternoon Mountain Time. So, the jury has been deliberating for, I think, just shy of 3 hours. And I thought maybe we would just go take a quick peek and see how things are going. So, let's get started. And before I go there, don't forget any questions that you want for Pendulum Friday, please put them in the comment section below, and the amazing Joyce will make sure I get them for Friday. So they started deliberating. They had lunch, kind of gone back to deliberating. The energy in the room is uh, it's like friendly. Like there's nothing's combative about the way they're communicating with each other. There is sort of a listening to this and listening to that, working their way through, their thoughts, how they reacted, what their sort of initial feelings are. It doesn't feel like there is a great deal of contention in the room. It feels like everybody's kind of getting along with everybody else. There are, if you saw a recent video I did where I was talking about the 12 jurors and I said they were showing it to me like a graph, right? Where this one, has a lot of confidence and this one is not quite convinced, but they're all above water. So it's that same energy, actually. It's just a feeling of guilt, right? I mean, they can't really dispute the paper. And that what I'm getting is that is going to be what makes the final decisions. It's like, as far as the personality of people, who did what, who said what, who thinks what of who. As of right now, energetically, it feels very much like they are kind of like, that was really interesting. Let's look at the documents. So there seems to be a kind of energy around looking at sort of the cold, hard facts as opposed to as opposed to some of the stuff that sort of would look like tug on your emotions or create like an emotional response within you. There are a couple of people on the jury that are going to require a little bit of, I don't even want to use the word convincing, but just almost like clarifying. My understanding is that the whole misdemeanor charge, or if you don't want to charge this as a felony, you can charge this as a misdemeanor. Apparently that is off the board, and it is like felony convictions or nothing. So that that's not giving them a lot of a lot of options. It's like this or that. It feels very binary to them, and that's okay. They're like okay with that. I'm still feeling like this should be wrapped by Friday. At the outside. And again, I think I said in a previous video that it felt like by the end of Thursday, they were sort of all in agreement. And then there was kind of this attitude of, well, let's sleep on it and come back. Now, that could also happen with let's have lunch on Friday and then come back. break for supper on Thursday and then come back. It just feels like they're sort of taking, at some point they're going to take this sort of break to step away and then go forward. They are very mindful of the fact that they are talking about a person who was a previous president of the United States. They are very, very mindful of that, but they do not seem to be particularly swayed by that. So they're saying, yes, you know what? We need to make this decision carefully because, this is who this is. But that doesn't it doesn't seem to be impacting them in a way so that they're saying, well, it doesn't matter what he did. He was the president. We can't do this to him. It very much feels like, yeah, we're aware of what he was and who he was and who he is and whether he's trying to do it again. But that doesn't really have anything. And the way it's interesting because the way they're sort of looking at this is that this event started before he was president. And so they really kind of have this feeling of almost one has not a lot to do with the other one. If that's making sense to you, it's sort of like they're like, yep, that's what he was, all right. But this happened before. And in fact, how much of what he did actually impacted the election. And how do we know that? And they don't, of course. How do we know that had he done this or not done this or done it differently, the results of the election would have been different? So the choices he made impacted the election, but the behavior, even though, writing the checks and signing them went on through into the presidency, the behavior was prior to. And that's how they are sort of keeping the two things separate. They also, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this some time ago, that this constant referring to him as President Trump, it feels actually like that became more of an irritant than it did trying to reinforce sort of this positive flavor over. They also had apparently a fair bit to say about his behavior, his attitude within the courtroom itself. There is a feeling of being insulted, but it's like it insulted them, insulted the judge, insulted the court. His behavior did not win any positive influence, and the cross-examinations and the examinations that were done by the defense also were jarring in some ways, where the prosecution felt very sort of fluid, right? It was like this story that they were telling you from one point to the next. The defense really was defensive. They didn't offer any alternate explanations. They just were aggressive, and it didn't sit well with them. So I'm just not getting, there's talk going back and forth, but there's nobody, or I'm not seeing anybody who is sort of dug in. It feels like at this point, there's still a lot of, well, this is my perceptions. This is what I think about it. This is, how I feel about it. That kind of talk and communication going on. where we're at right now, honestly, is sit back, take a couple of deep breaths, and just trust the system's going to work, and we will get the answer as soon as the answer is available, and that he is not going to skate on this. There's not going to be flat out acquittal. And again, I am not getting a hung jury. So now there's just one other thing that they would just like for you to think about. There's been a lot of frustration and aggravation about the fact that the other cases that are deemed more important have been dragging, right? I mean, you've got the whole Cannon thing in Florida, and you've got the Georgia thing is, I'm not getting how it's actually moving forward. I mean, they still got Fonnie Willis sort of under this ridiculous investigation to see whether or not she can continue on as in her position of attorney general, which is ridiculous because she just won the election. So these people should give their head a shake, or the re-election, and give their head a shake and say, wait a minute, this is what the people want. Maybe we should stop pushing so hard, but they're not gonna. You've got the immunity thing still going on. And apparently Judge Alito released something this morning saying he's not recusing for nothing connected to nothing. So there's that. But sometimes it's necessary to just take a step back and think about how this particular trial, how it changed or shifted perceptions. There is something a little bit ironic about the fact that this person who considered himself, New York's playboy, even though he was married, finds himself sort of in a place where it is his own personal behavior, his own like morals, that's not what I want to say, but you get what I'm saying. That behavior ultimately is what ended up kind of going on trial, right? The fact that he is corrupt, and the fact, or allegedly corrupt, the fact that he did things that everybody else did, and even though it was illegal, everybody else did it, so it should be fine. There's a lot of that kind of. It showed him, this trial showed him in his worst possible light. And so in some ways, it was really fitting that this person who was sort of slimy for all of his life, that we can figure out for entertainment purposes only, ended up being on trial as the first president in the United States to ever go on trial for that kind of behavior, the kind of ideas and attitudes that are so abhorrent to most of us. So in some way, you know what, he's going to be found guilty of other things. There's going to be other charges, et cetera, et cetera. But in some ways, this trial was actually an interesting way to start, because what it did was it so clearly explained his attitudes, his thought processes, cover it up, bury it, pay it off, blame whoever. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, when somebody looks back at this time in American history, one of the things that is going to become very, very apparent is that this was somebody whose moral fiber was torn. Somebody who had gotten away his whole life with unacceptable bullying, aggressive, entitled behavior. But that ultimately, those ideas, those attitudes, those behaviors did not reflect the people of the United States. It did not reflect the majority of the people of the United States who don't behave that way. It's certainly not to that extent. So in some ways, even though this is disappointing, because it would have been, I don't know, more exciting, more interesting if, he was being charged with, I don't know, like espionage or insurrection. But what it did do was it really set the stage and laid bare who he is and the kind of behavior, ideas, and attitudes that he brought into the White House, which then explains the other things he did that created the other court cases. So just a thought, right? We have one under our belt. I'm still energetically being told that there's a very, very good chance there will be a second trial that I don't know if it will be completed, but it for sure is going to be started prior to the election. I'm getting September, so we'll see. August, September time. So that's what I know. So listen, all of us are kind of holding our breath. And you're going to be seeing this on Thursday. So hopefully sometimes today on Thursday, we have a verdict, but if not, I can't imagine it going to be on Friday. And that's what I know. All right. So I thank you very, very much for being here. Sorry if that reading sounded a little bit scattered and a little bit disjointed. It's the energies that I'm tapping into. But I'm not getting anything that's causing me concern or alarm. So there's that. Anyways, until next time, take care. Be well. We'll see you really soon. Bye-bye for now.